Lord Mayor, this is not about men, girls versus boys. I fully support women's emancipation, but you do not help women in female empowerment by ignoring men. These men are your brothers, they are your sons, they are your friends, and they deserve the dignity to be heard.
I do feel like I have to talk about our young boys in society. I've got a Financial Times report here from back in 2015 that shows that only 9% of white working class boys from deprived backgrounds will make it to university in the UK. And it feels like for the last 5 years, nobody wants to talk about this because it's a taboo subject. It's seen as politically incorrect. And I fear that the consequence of that is we're creating an underclass in our society.
Many people would argue there is currently a crisis of masculinity in this country, but not many people want to talk about it. Many children these days are growing up without any male role models whatsoever. You won't find any male role models in schools either. Only 25% of school teachers are men, and this is even lower in primary schools at 15%. Girls are much more likely to finish school with good grades. If you're a boy, you are 3 times more likely to be expelled.
We are quite lucky at this council that we do have an elected member of this city that actually dropped out of school himself, went on to have moderate success and is now the city councillor for none other, frankly, Great Park. Despite this, there was a cross-party group set up, which I did send an email to saying I wanted to be part of, dedicated to young people like myself dropping off the end, and I wasn't allowed to attend, and I was quite disappointed by that. So if I'm not allowed to attend such discussions, at least allow me to see what you're actually proposing, because I am pretty much your target demographic.
Currently, if you're a man in the UK under the age of 45, the biggest risk to your life right now is yourself.
Currently in the UK, the single biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide. Yesterday was the Global Suicide Prevention Day, so I'm asking you the question, what is this council doing to prevent suicide in this city?
Men make up a lot of domestic violence victims as well, but there are only 93 spaces available for male refuge in comparison to 4,000 refugees for women.
Fast forward to today, and I see young men reverting to either a life of crime or recluse away to a life trapped away in a bedroom, checking out of society. Many of our young boys don't have a purpose, they simply exist. And it feels like the mainstream establishment are completely out of touch on this topic.
And of course, as we all know, 86% of rough sleepers are men, 84% of hidden homeless men are men. Men are much more likely to be victims of violent crime. 70% of the murders are men. 90% of workplace deaths are men. Men serve 64% longer prison sentences than women and are 4 times more likely to be in prison for exactly the same crime. Also, rape and sexual violence also affects men, particularly in the gay community. A recent survey has found that 62% of gay men have been groped without consent. And of course, if you're a man, you're much less likely to come forward about such things.
I'm sure you're pretty all tired of me banging on about, but I will die on a hill for the cause, which is our boys are currently failing drastically in education at the moment. And I really, really think as a council, we should look more into why this is happening.
We don't just need to smash the stigma about men talking about their issues. We also need to smash the stigma about talking about men's issues. Full stop. There is absolutely no point in asking men to come out and open up about their feelings if we live in a society that will refuse to listen to them or even acknowledge that they can be victims.
We can't keep getting away from this. We need to eventually address this as a society and start talking about why this happens. And I think in the current climate, where we've got protests happening around the world in the name of Black Lives Matter, which this does affect the black community, we need to be talking about these and asking these fundamentally hard questions. Why is it that boys are not doing as well in education as their female counterparts? And I know that might be difficult for some people on the council to talk about, but I think we do need to address it.
For far too long, our boys and young men, particularly from working class backgrounds, whether black or white, have systematically been discriminated against by academic institutions that have progressively been hijacked by political dogma and misandrous ideologies known as intersectionality. This, for generations, has fueled a lot of anger and bitterness, which I believe has directly contributed to the last decade of political decline. You can see this everywhere, from the rise of gangs and knife crime to the rise of populism on both the left and the right. This issue has been staring us in the face for so long, yet so many of us have chosen to ignore it, stepping over it like homeless people in the street, who ironically happen to mostly be men.
Actually, being from Frankly, we have a problem with gangs. And well, in southwest Birmingham in general, we have a problem with gangs, and what's fueling gangs is drugs. And when kids are falling off the end at school and they're going out and selling drugs, what are they effectively doing? They're effectively running a business. They'll sell the drug, they'll grow the weed, they'll go back and get a bigger batch. That's wholesale, really, economies of scale.
But I look at a lot of the kids that are getting wrapped up in gangs and violence, and I think that could have been me. And it was free enterprise and being an entrepreneur that got me out of that. And I ask myself, we can sit here about funding for education, but why are we not teaching anything about business and free enterprise in our schools, especially in the digital economy in the 21st century? It is the future.
So if you don't teach them business, maybe teach them GCSE economics, comparative advantage, supply and demand, basic economic skills. And then, we give people £9,000 a year to go to university. And according to the Higher Education Statistics Authority, in 2014, 40% of university graduates go on to work in the public sector. A third of them go on to non-professional roles. So, I kind of brand that as state nepotism. It's no different than a rich kid in Sutton Coldfield going to work for his dad's company. You haven't really gone out into the marketplace and bartered your human capital, have you? You've just been filtered into the public sector.
By the age of 21, I had my own music studio above a shop. At 23, I was working for an entertainment magazine. 25, I was working for the largest newspaper group in the country. Now, I did all that on my own without any GCSEs, and yet how many kids are being told that if they don't get their GCSEs and they don't go to university, they're going to be a failure for the rest of their life? And that really, really angers me.
I mentioned yesterday during my speech in the chamber that I had to teach myself how to start a business. So I'd like you to expand on that and talk about what you're actually doing to reach young people and how you're, directing them into a path of entrepreneurship if it's that's the path they want to go down. And in the digital world, in the digital economy, you can have a young bloke, and this is where the gap is between education and business. A young bloke in his bedroom, disenfranchised with the world, could start a business, start an e-commerce website, be buying products from halfway around the world and sell them to the high street in Northfield. But again, we are not teaching that, and I think the pessimism around this room on Brexit is pretty much testament to that. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, it's time we put identity politics where it belongs in the bin, to start putting people into boxes, start treating people as people. Only then will you live in a truly plural society, and you cannot call yourself an egalitarian until we all start to acknowledge that boys have issues too. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you.